Hey everybody, welcome to the Herd Fit Podcast with Dr. Sam Rhee and myself, Coach David Syvertsen. This podcast is aimed at helping anyone and everyone looking to enhance their healthy lifestyle through fitness, nutrition, and most importantly, mindset.
Welcome back to the Herd Fit Podcast. I am Coach David Syvertsen. I'm here with my co-host, Dr. and Coach Sam Rhee, and we are back for another episode. Today, we are going to kind of recap the 2023 Open. Next week's episode is going to be more about how you can improve yourself or what you can personally take from the Open, both mentally, physically, emotionally, all of that, and kind of maybe just give you a little kind of kickstart to how you can start your training for the next 11 months, because that will be back again. That feeling of the Open, it will be back. But today, I want to spend a little bit more time on just recapping what just happened, because as much as we anticipate the Open, especially this year, it goes by so fast. You feel like you snap your fingers twice and it's just gone in the rearview mirror. The workouts feel long. You're doing burpee pulls for 15 minutes and you're like, oh my God, when's this going to end? But I always had this feeling once the Open's over, it's a relief personally sometimes that, we can get back to normal at the gym. There's a little bit less like roller coaster of emotions with our athletes, and just get back to doing what we do all year. But I'm also, I have kind of like a dopamine crash at the end of the Open every year that like, especially that first Friday back where we're like, man, I kind of miss having, the heats, the judges, the standards, talking about that kind of stuff. So it's a time that I just like to kind of just reflect on what happened in this year's Open, workouts, the announcement. I think we have a little extra to talk about there. And then what we think CrossFit could do better with the Open, because I think they say it all the time. They're trying to improve the system. And I have a few suggestions. I'm sure Sam does too. So let's dive into it. Sam, opening thoughts on the recap of the 2023 Open, both from a CrossFit perspective and a Bison perspective.
The first thing I want to say is to thank everyone at Bison who participated. Mm-hmm. Like we had, how many people this year?
275. Yeah, 275, 277.
Right. And, for us to get there, we not only need everyone who shows up like every day or every other day, but we need all the people that we've known over the years who support Bison, who are still incredibly high on their fitness level. Maybe not coming in every day, but it was such a pleasure to see so many people that I hadn't seen in a while show up, do the workouts, enjoy the community, because it's not just about fitnessing, it's about our community.
For sure.
And so for everyone to come and support, to suffer a little bit together, to work out. I mean, like you said, this year was a particularly special year for us, but I was incredibly grateful to see as many people as we did.
Yeah. I mean, we have, that is why we had the announcement. We'll talk about it a bit later, but you could say it's the great gym you have, the great athletes. It's really because we had a lot of people sign up. And I have people tell me this every year that they will say, I don't want to do the Open. I'm not really signing up for CrossFit or for myself. I'm signing up for you, Dave, or you, the gym, and that's something that we don't take lightly. We appreciate it very much. Very thankful, to echo Sam on that. The Open is special because of the people. It's not the workouts. It's not even the environment. It's the people that are doing it, right? I always create these scenarios in my head that imagine half the gym did it, half the gym didn't. It wouldn't be a special time. If anything, it'd be more of a fight. It'd be more of a struggle. So we know that only happens because you guys put yourselves out there. And it's scary. I agree that it could still be a little nerve-wracking, especially when certain movements come up that you're not comfortable with or loads that you can't do, and having a judge and having your score put out there for everyone to see. I give a lot of people credit for putting themselves out there. So, yeah, go ahead. Anything else? Cool. No. So the workouts, right? We broke down two of them. We didn't have a 23.2 breakdown because of, that was the day of the announcement, and just, there was no time back then. But I do kind of want to recap the workouts, not individually, piece by piece, but what actually was tested in the Open. The Open used to be 5, sometimes 6 scores. It's now 3, sometimes 4. So there are a lot of things that do not get tested in the Open. And as much as I like to call this a fitness test, it's not deep enough to really bring the true, cream of the crops at the top. Right? Like we just got done talking about a little bit where if you advance to the next stage, there's always some luck involved, right? I mean, I could program 3 workouts right now that could be Open workouts that I would not qualify for the top 10%. So there's luck that those were not programmed. And then, so you could be on either side of that. And I kind of want people to have some awareness that if you were happy or not happy about your open result from a performance perspective, what was truly tested in this open, what was not, and was that part of the reason why you kind of ended where you did? And, we're going to get into that, but we're not going to like break down each workout. Just keep that in mind, okay? So let's talk about from a big picture perspective, what were the things that were tested in this year's Open, or what were some of the surprises of this year Open that we have not seen in a couple of years?
The first thing is did you listen to Boz's podcast?
I did.
Yeah. So, he, as architecting this, you can see he has general themes,
Right.
And then he sort of hones down specifically. So if you listen to him, he wanted to do a repeat because there wasn't one last year.
Mm-hmm.
And if you saw the way he kind of went about thinking about those repeats, the one he chose, 14.4, sort of filled a lot of his, it's like interlocking puzzle. Like you have one and then you have to fit everything else around everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the one that actually is very popular. If you look at programming over the years, people have actually programmed that one.
Yeah.
The 60 cal row, 50 toes to bar, 40 wall balls, 30 cleans, 20 muscle ups.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted something heavy.
Yep.
And he didn't want the standard snatch or clean and jerk, so he did a 1 rep max thruster. And he also wanted something new, so he threw shuttle runs in, which he had already sort of tested the year before at the, what was the
quarterfinals?
At the quarterfinals.
Yeah, quarterfinals. Yep,
that's right. That week. So, so when you look at Boz's logic for all of these things, first of all, it's amazing. I overall, after listening to him and doing these workouts, in order to be able to provide something that everyone can do, at least some of, but then also differentiate the elite athletes so that you can actually sort of see who can perform at the highest level.
Yep.
It's an amazingly complicated endeavor. And I think they pulled it off again this year really well. There are things we're going to talk about, I'm sure, that we can sort of nitpick about. And I would also say that I saw a lot of athletes at our gym work on the foundations level and the scaled level who did incredibly well. And I feel like, honestly, every year I'm getting, these are fitness tests for me, but if I wanted to really work on my fitness, I would do the scaled version of every workout and
increase your work capacity.
And increase my fitness level.
Yeah.
And I saw that with a lot of athletes.
Yeah, the progression of these workouts has not just, does not just pertain to the RX. These scaled versions of these workouts got harder. The foundations, even, in my opinion, they've gotten hard. And foundations has only been a thing for a few years now, but I think that the needle and the threshold is continuing to be pushed on every level. And it kind of coincides with Bison, right? We talked about how much harder Bison programming is as opposed to 6-7 years ago or even 3 years ago. And I think that's kind of the point. And I love that CrossFit is the catalyst. The CrossFit Games season is the catalyst for it. But one thing I noticed about this year's Open was it was hard. The movements, the loads, the lifting. And for a couple of years, dating back to when the pandemic, really shut down a lot of gyms and people had to do it at home. They wanted to make it as accessible as possible. We saw a 2-year theme that where it was like, all right, I would never call the open workouts easy because it's always about what you put into it intensity wise. But we didn't see last year, for example, there was no Olympic lifting. We haven't seen the rings in a few years. We haven't seen these knockout workouts, meaning you have to get X amount of work done before you qualify for the next stage of the workout. And that's back when Dave Castro was programming them. And now that Boz took over, and it seems like there's, from a PR perspective, more initiative to get more people involved in the Open, I was surprised essentially every week. And I take pride in not being too surprised. Even though you can't predict the workouts, you should always, training for the unknowable, meaning you don't know what the tests are going to be. I was surprised to see ring muscle ups in week 1. I was surprised to see a 1 rep max thruster in week 2. I was surprised to see strict handstand push-ups and heavy snatches in week 3. And it would, maybe if one of them was really complicated or high skill, high load, I'd be like, okay, that's fine. But all 3, you can make a case all 3 weeks. That was a kind of a classic example of Boz zigging when we're zagging, right? And that's kind of, in my opinion, I'm actually happy it happened because I don't want the Open to ever get to a point where it's predictable. you lose out on so much value and what the Open truly is, and then what CrossFit truly is. So I really love this year's programming from that macro perspective. When you saw that opening workout, the ring muscle up one, I mean, you can go back and listen to some of Sam's thoughts from the 23.1 recap that we did that night. But when you saw that, and then you saw 1 rep max thruster, and then you see strict handstand push-ups and snatching, did you get that feel as well?
Yeah, this was probably one of the most challenging opens overall from a skill perspective, and also from a make or break perspective. So if you look at the analysis of all 3 workouts, there was almost a very clear dividing line between testing your fitness and then testing the competitive or the sport aspect for athletes. So for most athletes, if you did scaled for the first one, you did great. Like, it was a very good fitness challenge. It was the 60 cal row, the 50 toes to bar, 40 wall balls, and just getting through all that, if you could get through any of it as a scaled athlete, is fantastic. And then if you get through a bunch of cleans, that's great.
Right.
If you're an RX athlete, really dividing line is getting through those 30 cleans and then hitting any muscle up.
Yeah.
And you could see that was the clear break for that one.
Yep.
And many people at the gym hit the 30 cleans and just couldn't get to the 181 rep count.
Yeah, a lot of 180s.
Right. And you saw that nationwide too. It was like something like 20% of the 16 to 54 hit 180 plus, but 53% of the people who did it in the US got up to 180, and that was it.
Wow.
So
huge gap.
Yeah. Also a lot of scale. 27% of the people did scale their foundations, which is a huge amount. So people were smart about their fitness. A lot of people fitnessed up to the ring muscle ups. But if you're going to compete on the higher level of this thing, like, you need that. And Boz is like, if you really want to get there and call yourself like a competitive athlete, you got to get there.
Right. And so now, what's the cutoff for week 2? I mean, week 2 is just more about a pure engine test. And Boz even said like that originally was going to be a 10-minute workout. They had to separate it more. I'll get into some of my feedback on that, about that workout, especially from just a gym owner perspective. But what was the cutoff on that one? Was it your engine, or was it the strength, or did they kind of have their own individual cutoffs? What is your initial answer on it? And I'll say while you think about that, from a programming perspective, I think what it did, and the Open does this to me a lot, and I hope all that program this can be humble enough to, hey, I'm not doing enough of this for my gym, is I don't think we've done a heavy 1 rep max thrust in our gym since 2014. I remember doing it our first year, and almost 10 years later, we haven't tested that. And it's okay. You can make your thruster a lot stronger by front squatting, which we do, push pressing like we do, right? But that separation of just raw strength, but you needed 2 things, right? If you're a strong squatter, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to crush the thruster. If you're a strong presser, that does not necessarily mean you're going to crush the thruster. There are, and I bring this up because there are some respectable voices in the space that say a 1 rep max thruster should never be an open event, or a 1 rep max lift should never be an event in the CrossFit Open. It could be a part of a workout, or what they did in point 3 with the escalating weights, where a lot of people did hit a snatch PR or failed because they couldn't hit that snatch weight. What's the separating factor there? Did you notice that there should be, if you were stronger, it helped you out and couldn't, get the engine work done, or vice versa?
There were both. We saw athletes on both sides of this one, right?
Yeah.
Who went heavy on the thruster because they're really strong, and really struggled on the shuttle runs for the first part. And I think that was very intentional on Boz's part.
Yeah.
And you can't, it doesn't matter what your strength is.
Right.
You can't have a weakness.
Right.
And that's what this one...
significant weakness,
That's what this one showed. And I saw some people who crushed the shuttle runs, and their lift numbers were just not up to par.
Right.
And that killed them if you're a competitive athlete in terms of your rank.
Yeah.
Vice versa. There were at least 1 or 2 athletes that I know who would have made quarterfinals this year, if you want to go by that standard, who did not do well on the shuttle runs, but absolutely destroyed the thrusters.
Yeah.
I would say the one thing about this workout that actually stood out to me also was it's a lot tougher for the women to do that first part RX. Right. Even jumping pull-ups, even though they're still easier than a regular pull-up, like
just upper body demand.
It's just that upper body. So if you look at the breakdown, 27% did the scaled version of the shuttle runs versus only of women versus 5%
Okay.
of men.
Wow.
So
That's a huge gap.
huge. So, and the breakdown in terms of where it was for people to get into the competitive side of things was after the 5th round. So you had to get through 25 burpee pull-ups and 10 shuttle runs. That was sort of the dividing line. If you could get into the round of 30 burpee pull-ups, you were sort of in the upper echelon of performance. And we had a lot of people that got there.
We did.
And actually, surprisingly, a lot of our women, I think, outperformed the average in terms of the nation, in terms of their performances. I saw a lot of people in the 125 pluses.
Good point.
The thruster, you're right. And that's interesting to me when I listen to you talk about it, because you are programming for Bison, and this kind of helps you
For sure.
recalibrate and say, all right, what is it that I need to do for our gym to make sure that we're prepared? And now you're thinking, all right, so now are we going to be lifting more, do you think, in the future?
I think so. I wouldn't say we're going to do more strength work, but I think we could maybe switch up the strength work a little bit. And like, instead of doing, 3 squat cycles throughout the year, maybe we do 2, and then we do a thruster cycle at some point, right? Where, sets of 5, sets of 3, sets of 1. For those that make quarterfinals and those that want to make semis, I don't think that's the last you saw of the heavy thruster, by the way. I think that's going to come back in like a set of 3 or a set of 5 at some point. But, it definitely does kind of bring you back down to earth. And this is, I'm going to get into this later, but why I think CrossFit gyms should be doing the open, why you should be pushing it onto your members, why owners and coaches should be keeping themselves accountable. But that's, I felt this way about snatches in the past. Should we be snatching more? And that can go back and forth because of the mobility and stability and flexibility demands and how we are here for fitness first, sport second. Even though we do a good job of blending the two, we are here for the fitness first, sport second. And the more I think about that, the more I believe we snatch the right amount. It's a couple times throughout the year.
The other thing is if you look at our quarterfinalist breakdown, it was like 14 women and 6 guys.
15 and 5, I think.
Yeah. So if you look at, and I think this workout, especially the second part, well, the first part I just talked about, but the second one with the 1 rep max thruster, the 50th percentile for women was 121 pounds. For men, it was 185. To score into the 99th percentile, a woman needed to hit 185 and a man needed to hit 277. I think our women did amazingly well on the thruster. I saw a lot of really, really, really good thruster weights. And so I think...
Why do you think that is? I have an idea, but...
we just have incredibly strong women. What do you think?
I think, generally speaking, women have so much more mobility and flexibility, and the thruster is very much about your positioning. It's not just a squat and a press. It's being able to squat, even if you're squat cleaning, especially in a really good upright position with a good front rack, so that when you get to that triple extension at the top, the bar is in the most ideal spot for you to finish off the lift. Where you see a lot of guys, when they catch that heavy thruster, you see the shoulders slouch, the elbows crash down a little bit, and now they start that press position from an inch or 2 lower. And when you're at near failure, that is often the difference, is 1 or 2 inches you would have gotten it, right? And I just remember watching a lot of women and a lot of men do that thruster, and that was the biggest difference I saw, is guys just literally were trying to muscle it up, where the women, I think, were a little bit more cleaner. Well, they were a little bit cleaner with the technique, and that started with the mobility, and that starts with the positioning.
I agree. The technique has a lot to do with it. The one thing I would say that I'm not loving was judging this was tough, especially that Rhee dip.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard as a judge.
It is.
And then you go back and you look at the lifts and you're like, oh, their knees definitely bent. The whole walking thing was a whole thing.
I mean, walking means your knees are going to bend a little bit, for sure.
So
I took a step on mine,
Yeah. So I think, but these are sort of nitpicky details.
Yeah, and I do want to nitpick. I want to save the nitpicking for the end.
Okay.
But macro level, what this tested, guys, if you got crushed or did well or didn't do well, almost always when you have to lift heavy in the open, you're going to do it when you're tired. So don't ever ignore that concept if you're training by yourself or if you're training at the gym, in a class. You have to be strong when you're tired. And I know guys and girls that probably could have hit another 15 to 20% of their lift if they were fresh. And I think the best athletes in CrossFit can hit, no matter if it's a 1 rep max, 3 rep max, 5 rep max, at the end of the workout, they could still touch 90 to 95% of the 1 rep max. That's a number I want you to kind of keep in your head with all of your lifts, is after a hard workout, and you're smoked. If you can hit 90 to 95% of your 1 rep max routinely, not every now and then, not just in the open, you're going to be set up for the strength test in the open, because I don't think we're ever going to see in the open, hey, 5 minutes to find a 1 rep max deadlift. Like, I think it's always going to be after a workout, like this one. So that was the biggest takeaway that I think everyone needs to kind of just keep away from keep in the front of their mind on that workout. The final workout, point 3, really, really high skill, heavy weight. I mean, you couldn't hide in that workout. At some point, you got held up. A lot of us, it was the handstand push-up wall walk combination, just like that shoulder fatigue. And everyone's been there before. When your shoulders get to failure, you are basically screwed for the rest of the workout. You really want to avoid that red line stage. And that takes a lot of training, but it also takes a lot of awareness and a lot of just mental kind of recapping after workouts. What point did you get to, right? If I told Sam to go do 50 strict handstand push-ups for time, and he just goes into it blind and just says 10 in a row, 15 in a row. And then all of a sudden you get to 20 and you're just doing singles, you start failing reps, like, you are screwed. And you have to really have a good idea how long in between your reps do you need before you try up again.
Why do you make me a guinea pig for these things? That's so awful.
Sam, what are you doing later after the show, by the way?
God. I'm just like cringing.
But the snatching too. I mean, everyone can snatch that first barbell, RX scale foundations, right? The second barbell, it changes, right? And I don't think it's always a strength issue. That's what I kind of like about this workout. There is so much technique to the lift, and I think 90% of CrossFitters, myself included, we do not snatch what we are capable of snatching according to our strength, because we have something off with either our first pull, second pull, third pull, mobility. All right, that's going to come up again in our next episode when I talk about how you can get better at CrossFit between now and next year's Open. But that workout was so interesting to me, and I loved watching it, even though it was only a 6-minute workout for many people. And I know that sucks. I'm going to touch on that in a sec. But Sam, what were your thoughts on that workout from what tested the most? Or is that not really a fair question because it's different for everyone?
Well, this was clearly the separator one, right? So you had to keep progressing in order to get to the end. And from an ego perspective, there are some people who really sort of hate that. Mm-hmm. From a fitness perspective, I think I don't understand why people would ever complain about something like this.
Right.
It was very technical. I know at least a couple people who got dinged from making quarterfinals because they couldn't do double unders, for God's sakes. It's like, at this point in your CrossFit career, if you don't know how to do double unders and you have competitive aspirations, right, it's like,
yeah,
that's a no-brainer.
Right.
The snatches. So when talking to people, the issue is this: it is a very technically difficult lift. Mm-hmm. There is the psychological problem that a lot of people have when the weight gets heavy, going overhead with it. Mm-hmm. They're like, I'm physically or psychologically afraid of it crashing down on my head.
Right.
And this is something that...
Which is fair.
This is something where fitness and sport sort of kind of... Like, I'm never going to push anyone to snatch heavy.
Yeah, same. It gets muddy here.
Yeah, and that's why I know you don't always program all these heavy snatches or overhead squats. But if you do have competitive aspirations, again, it's something that you have to work on. If you're not doing it, you're going to suffer mightily. I haven't snatched a ton, but I have worked on my snatch to form quite a bit in the past. And, this was one where I probably, honestly, if I had scaled it, would have been much better. I know a lot of the athletes scaled it, because the RX for women 65 then 95 is just so hard.
Yeah.
So hard.
Yeah.
And then for men, the 95 to 135 also, who can rip out 12, most of our people in our gym, that's really a challenge.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm skating that ragged edge even now.
Yeah.
I feel like next year I'm going to be scaling a lot of these or just waiting till I get to 55 because these are so challenging. And this was one where you just have to deal with your ego. Listen, if you can't do it, just scale it.
Yeah.
You work on your fitness.
Right.
If you have competitive aspirations, you better work on your snatch form.
Right. And that's a weight that 135.95 is something you have to be able to move in a workout and not just once every minute, right? If you have competitive aspirations. If you're not there, then block that out. It's not, no, snatching 135.95 is not important. It's just not. There's a lot of other things you can do to improve your fitness. But I will say this about the snatch, because we don't snatch a lot. All right, so the people that made quarters, let's just use them for an example. I don't want to keep bringing them up, but they did well in this workout. And that's what Sam means by it's a separator. And the one takeaway I think everyone can take from that, whether you have those aspirations or not, is you can't just be biased towards what you like to do. Gymnastics, jump rope, running, no weight, but you can't just be biased towards lifting. Everyone that did well in this workout, basically they got to that third section and were in the handstand push-ups, strict handstand push-ups, or even finished them, right? I look at all the names that got there because we were taking kind of bets or like making spreads. I'm like, all right, how many people are going to get to this point, right? It's just something fun we do, right? For coaches. And I looked at those names and I said, all those guys are pretty responsible with how they approach CrossFit. That some of them really like to lift, don't love gymnastics, but they still do the gymnastics. Some of those people really love gymnastics, but they don't ignore the lifting days. And I think that's a takeaway we should all take. Again, take away the competitive aspirations. That's CrossFit. And that's the Open, is try as hard as you can to be accountable to yourself, that when you do look at the programming a week ahead of time, you're not saying no to a certain day because you don't like those movements. Because that you will end up on the outside looking in, whether it's just your goals, a competitive aspiration, again, that if you're really going to fully buy into the CrossFit methodology and let this transform you mentally and physically, you have to find those days that you don't like to do, and you have to make sure you get there as often as you can.
I like the fact they did strict handstand push-ups instead of kipping.
Yeah.
And Boss said that was really for safety, and I'm a big...
I didn't catch that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I like knowing that.
Yeah,
okay.
He said like under fatigue, people trying to rip out 20 kipping hand or whatever number would be really hard on their necks.
Good for him.
And so that was a safety issue.
When I saw 20 strict after all that stuff, I was like, whoa. That's when I was like, this workout's going to be brutal.
I know.
But
right.
That's what we want.
Yes.
Yeah.
How many people in our gym actually got to the 9 snatches at either 125 or 185 already?
To it or got one?
Got at least one.
I think 7.
Yeah. So that's insane to me that we got 7 that could snatch 125 or 185. Like that to me.
After all that.
Is like very, very, very impressive.
Yeah.
After the 20 handstand push-ups.
I agree.
And the double under.
Did
anyone finish the 9 snatches?
In RX, no. We had a bunch of people scale the workout and finish, which is equally impressive.
Yes.
If you go do some reps per minute math on that, like Will Doherty, I think he absolutely murdered this workout. Jody came back a second time. She finished it. You know, those are really admirable efforts, because I'll tell you what, again, scaled, I tell people this every year. If we all did scaled, we would be crushed after the workouts, because it's just the rate of movement, the intensity that's put into it. And those guys will 135 snatch, 135.95 at the end of that workout.
Yeah.
That's hard to do.
Really hard.
And, you know, with all the volume they did prior to. And so that's, I think that nobody RX finished the 185 snatch. Kathleen and Tracy, though, they did finish the third barbell with the slightly lower loads with the 55 plus
155 plus. Yeah. 55 plus group.
So, all right. So there's two parts left of this kind of open recap that I want to get into. One is critique, constructive criticism. I'm not going to put my Hiller hat on and just criticize the hell out of everyone, but I do know that CrossFit does like feedback, and I'm going to give some from more of a coach owner perspective. And then I want to cap it off with more of a positive kind of reinforcement why I believe in the Open so much. So things that we would critique about the Open this year. My number one is the standout is, if you are going to do a 20-minute workout, and I am not against the 20-minute workout in the Open, I promise. But if you are going to do that, you have to put extra attention for the sake of the affiliates, which everyone says they care about. You have to put extra attention on helping them out with the setup. And the setup of burpee pull-ups, the run and burpee pull-ups was not hard. But when you also have to have barbells on the floor, weights everywhere, stripping bars in between heats, adding bars between heats, getting people to warm up again, I'm going to tell you this, it is impossible to do in an hour. It is not possible unless you have 11 coaches that are like setting things up. And even that, it still feels rushed. And I would love to just be a fly on the wall when discussions of workouts are occurring. Does anyone bring that up? Because there are still certain little situations, and again, I love the new leadership of CrossFit, and I'm not brown nosing. All right, I'm in my head, I'm probably never going to talk to them again. Right, I just think that's the way it's going to be. But I am excited about the leadership. Don Fall, Austin, Boz, but I would love to hear a conversation. Do you bring the affiliates up in these conversations? Because not only is it a 20-minute workout, it's probably the hardest workout for a gym to get a lot of people going in one heat because of the space. We're blessed with a really pretty big gym, and also the layout of our gym helped us out a lot for this workout. Think about Old Bison. How many people, and we had classes of 25 back then.
Yeah.
How many people could do that workout at once? I came up with a rough number. I just want you to think about it for 10 seconds.
I would guess maybe 6.
Yep, 6 to 8.
Yeah.
So if I had 25 people, you're going to do 3 20-minute heats in an hour?
Yeah.
So basically, you just can't have classes on this. And so my question is not the workout, or even the length. Could you make it something where, the shuttle run is paired with something that doesn't need a lot of equipment, right? Instead of a barbell with all these weights, like could you do something else than a strength lift after? Could you put a dumbbell involved? Could you get a preloaded barbell that never changes, right? Like instead of a 1 rep max thruster, like why don't we just do, 2 minutes max thrusters at 135.95? Like that's like my biggest thing, that workout. And that was ironically the announcement that it took out some of the enjoyment of the open from me, because once I heard the workout, I immediately was like, how are we going to do this tomorrow morning? And, to be honest with you, our members are great with being flexible and they kind of get it during the open, but it was not a smooth open day.
That was technically the toughest out of the 3 for sure, because some people got burnt on the height of the pull-up because they didn't find one that was exactly like, so they had to jump sometimes maybe even like 4 to 6 inches higher.
I'm going to give you an example.
Who?
Ashley and Amy.
Oh, right.
Used the same pull-up bar.
Ooh.
Think about that. And like Ash's bar, Ash was one of the unlucky people.
Because she's like 6 inches shorter than Ash.
Yeah.
Than
tall,
Amy.
Yeah. But Ash just could not find a bar. Like it was either her hand was barely touching, so that would be cheating, and Ash would never do that.
Right.
And the other bars were a good 8 to 9 inches above her hands. My bar was an inch above my hand, so I had it easy.
Right.
And I completely agree with you that what is your solution? Because again, I'm big on don't come up with problems unless you have solutions.
I saw other gyms have really big mats, so you could do your, again, it's not awesome because it's soft, so you're kind of jumping on a cushion to get up, but that's how they would elevate people onto the burpee pull-up to a better height for them. I did see a couple people actually unscrew and rescrew the pull-up rigs.
I believe it.
And then the 25-foot thing, in terms of logistics with the rig, so difficult for so many gyms. So,
and you have like such a short amount of time to figure it out too. It puts. So really, my solution here is that workout could have been 10 minutes. I understand Boz wanted to extend it to separate the crowd a little bit more.
Yeah.
But if I'm just gonna, I would love there to be more thought that, all right, we're going to make this hard on gyms. And you know what, dude? Like, I am not a complainer. Like, you find a way to get it done. Like the year they put the dumbbells in, we didn't have them. We taped 5 to them with duct tape, right? Like, find a solution. But if there's a way for CrossFit to help out affiliates and say, hey, we're actually going to make this really difficult for them by making it 20 minutes, let's not also pair the 20-minute test with something that is logistically a potential nightmare.
The problem with this is that when he said he tested it, there were too many of the elite athletes clustered on a shorter time scale for the first part. And so he had to stretch out the time in order to not make more separation and not make things like transition play a huge role in it. I mean, if you don't want to do a run, you could do a weighted lunge or something. Yeah. And that might fulfill it to
or even switch it halfway through. Right. Like run for the first 3 rounds and lunge for this,
Right. So ascending difficulty on the run part. But, I mean, I'm sure he's tested it every which way.
Yeah.
Did some affiliates get totally screwed on this one?
And athletes with the pull-up bar.
And athletes, yes. So they're probably just sort of balancing their choices here.
My 2 solutions here. Number 1 is the they don't want a lot of ties in the open. There were a lot of ties in this workout because, I believe I have this right. Okay. If you tied someone on the lift, let's say you and I both hit 205, the tiebreaker was whoever did better on part one. That makes sense, right?
Oh, so they used your first part as the tiebreaker for the second? Oh.
But they didn't do it the other way around. And that's why I'm a little confused about. And I'm trying to do some of the math in my head if that would contradict the whole thing. But I think it'd be a good idea also, instead of having, 8,000 people with the same score, your also tiebreaker could be for part one. Let's say we both got 130 reps in part one.
Mm-hmm.
The tiebreaker should be whoever got the heavier thruster.
Right.
So now you're just going to have less ties. But I've always wanted to try this. I wish I had the balls to ask Boz, or even the time to ask Boz when he was here. When you do these max lifts, I think the best thing to do is to combine your weight from part two, the reps from part one, sum them together, and that is your score.
Oh.
And so that would prevent, there are people that did, I think, like 60 reps in part one.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, they just walked and then hit a 305 thruster.
Right.
That 305 thruster is going to look a lot worse if you only get 50 reps added to that score because of part one. So like I started doing some math with our Bison leaderboard on, all right, what would everyone's scores be?
And would it be comparable?
It would be, there would be differences.
Okay.
There would be.
And what does it weight towards more?
The lifting. So the lifting still does get the advantage.
Okay.
So like it's not that we're, and I think that's fine, especially in the open, like it's usually conditioning based anyway, but I hate the idea of someone dogging part one so they can do well in part two. I hate it. And then you could bring up the team scoring too, because the team scoring is the top 5 scores in the gym or top 4 scores in the gym. So you could just tell your lifters, don't even do part one. Just get ready for the lift.
There was it Hiller who said that if you walked part one, you could actually still do 10% better?
Yeah.
Do you believe that?
I mean, if your score's like in the 105 to 125 range, you probably could have walked the whole time and probably gotten a little bit better. And you don't want to create tests where that's an option. So, that's one thing I just wish, and I think it would have been a lot more fun to watch these guys do it. Not that it wasn't fun and exciting, but if it was a little shorter or had more of like a, hey, do this for time, I think it would have had a little bit more juice to it. Or, oh man, like Roman beat Patrick in the part one. Let's see if Patrick can get another 20 reps on the pounds on the thruster.
Oh, right, to make up
catch
for
Roman.
it. Yeah, that might be interesting.
I just feel like that would be a cool approach.
Yeah, then they would have to go for broke maybe if they were like 5 reps short or something, and then they'd be like, all right, I have to go for it on the thruster.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So that kind of just wraps up some of the things. I still think I would love to have a 4th week in the open.
No, I don't.
I don't get a lot of positive feedback when I say that. That's usually what Sam just did. But my opinion on it is 4 weeks is like kind of fits perfectly in, like it's a month, it's not 3 weeks, and 3 weeks does go kind of fast. And I do think there should be another test in there. I just think there's another opportunity to kind of shuffle the leaderboard a little bit for the people that are trying to get the top 10%. There's just too much luck involved, right? Like if your strength was hidden and your weaknesses was exposed in that open, you're kind of screwed, right? But if you have another week to kind of make up, kind of average out, I mean, hell, if there were 10 workouts in the open, you would definitely see the top 10% progress on. Where right now, it's always kind of muddy, especially when like at that turnaround point, like 89th percentile, 91st percentile, a lot of it is based on luck. So, but they got no excuses for those that, always have to work on your fitness and just be humble about it. What are any thoughts on the announcement? All right, we don't have to. Do you have any personal experiences from the 23.2 announcement that you wanted to share? Any words on that? What do you think?
Well, I was lucky enough to interact a fair amount with some of the people from CrossFit HQ.
Mm-hmm.
We did the podcast with Don Fall, which I thought was incredibly insightful in terms
Awesome.
of him as a CEO. And I got a fair amount of time to talk to Boz at the dinner before, as well as Becky Harsh and one or two other of the personnel there. And I would say my takeaway really just from and then Wilson, obviously, the setup guy.
Superman.
Yeah. These guys are working for us. Like they're working for the affiliate.
Right.
Like I got that sense that they are incredibly dedicated to making CrossFit better, which makes us better. I also realized that all of them have been doing this for a while, except for Don Fall.
Mm-hmm.
And they're good people.
Yeah.
Like I've met a lot of different corporate people in different industries, and they're not always good.
Mhm.
I mean, they are dedicated, they're smart. There are a lot of people out there in business that are incredibly good at what they do.
Yep.
But these guys truly believe that what they're doing is helping us. I
Mhm.
never got a sense of, what is the profit loss on this one?
Right.
Or what is is this going to maximize our revenue here?
Mhm.
No, this was, let's do this right for all the affiliates so we can get our message out to help affiliates.
Mhm.
And to me, and they had stories going way back. They drank this Kool-Aid way before we were drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yep.
When I heard Boz talk about his first box that he ran in CrossFit San Francisco, which was a shipping container right by the Golden Gate Bridge that he would open up every day,
Yeah.
and they would wad outside in a parking lot. Like,
That's awesome.
that's about as legit as you can get with
Yeah.
any of this stuff.
Mhm.
And so it inspired me to understand that these guys are us. They are helping us, and it makes me want to buy in even more.
Mhm. Yeah, I had the same vibe. I walked out of there just spending time with them, both at the gym, the dinners, and just the dozens and dozens of texts and emails that I had with Wilson. And we went out to dinner. He flew in the Saturday night before the announcement. We went out to dinner the night before in Glen Rock Inn, shout out, awesome restaurant. But listening to him and how dedicated they are to the craft and how they're trying to use the Open to help the brand, which is something I've believed in for so long, and to hear them speak that language, it reinforced that we're doing it right? And that's not a pat on the back. It just reinforces like, all right, there is a reason why we're doing this. There is a method to the madness. And like Sam said, the compassion, just the genuine kindness that everyone that I walked into, that everyone walked into their gym, the amount of people that were saying, thank you for opening your gym to us. Like, I'm sitting there and be like, dude, thank you. It's like, you're the one like filling the dream, but they were thankful, and they know that it did turn us upside down. It was very invasive, the entire process. But watching them work their butts off, till 11:30 the Thursday night to make sure, Wilson was vacuuming our gym for an hour and a half that last night, and he did not need to do that. And he did. He walked around the entire gym with this like little shitty vacuum that we have and did the entire floor, constantly reaching out after and making sure everything was all right. And it just kind of tied the whole like community aspect to it. Like, I don't think I've ever had that strong of a community feel within CrossFit in our near 10 years of business. And it wasn't just our gym, our members, who they are awesome as well for the entire process. But it was the ecosystem, the shot callers of CrossFit were here, and you just felt with them. You didn't feel beneath them. You didn't feel like you were like had to tiptoe around. Like the fact that Don came on after working out with us in our gym with Austin, that spoke volumes to me. It really did. The podcast itself was great, but the fact that he did it spoke volumes to me and just the general direction of this thing. So let's use that transition to the last part of this, the Open. Should you continue to do it? I went down a rabbit hole a couple days ago listening to another Hiller video. And again, if we ever get the opportunity to talk to a guy like him or even Savan, like 90% of what they put out there is awesome. I agree with it, especially with the standards, the judging, how it needs to be cleaned up. But the idea that we should not be doing the Open, to each their own. I respect everyone's decision, but I would love to have a conversation with everyone and anyone that doesn't think they should do the Open if they do CrossFit. We got the number that there's 2 to 3 million people that do CrossFit right now, and I think there's 350,000 people that signed up, or 400,000, right around there.
Oh, is that right?
It's gone up for the 4th year in a row. It continues to climb. So in my head, I'm saying 10% of CrossFitters are doing the Open right now, maybe 15%, and I would love to have a conversation with someone who generally thinks they shouldn't be doing it. And I think we need to get away from the fact that it's just a fitness test. When I was on camera during the announcement, I said it's 2 things. It's a test, yeah. And it's testing more than just your ability to do workouts. It's testing coaches and owners and the ecosystem in general. But it's also a celebration that, you made it another year. Like, here you are, you're still fighting that fight in a world where most people don't work out. Most people are not healthy. And here you are still putting yourself out there. Like, that should be celebrated. And tell me this, what one thing in CrossFit brings people together like this? The answer is nothing. There's nothing like it. Nothing brings a quarter of the people, even the people that watch the games. Like, this is bigger than that. And I think someone like Hiller, someone like Savan, who, like, they use every opportunity they can to criticize CrossFit and management and how, wrongfully they were treated, right? We should all be thankful to the ecosystem of CrossFit, right? Like, you and I are not sitting here. We're probably not feeling the way we do about ourselves right now without CrossFit. We don't have the same friends. And this is like a loyalty thing to me, that if you're doing CrossFit and we believe that it can help the brand out a little bit, you should be doing it. And I don't think we really need to go deeper than that conversation. If you're not doing the Open simply because, you don't like strict handstand push-ups, or you think the workouts are too hard, or you don't like the new CEO, then stop benefiting from it. Stop taking from CrossFit. Put something back into it and try to get other people to do it as well. Every gym owner out there, it's foolish not to do the Open. It just is. And I don't talk like this much on a podcast because it's your own business. It's your own thing. But if you own a box and you coach and you program and you test your athletes throughout the year, but you don't do the CrossFit Open, it's a foolish decision. And you are missing out on so much. And that goes so far beyond the workouts. Sam can agree with me on this. There's nothing like the Open throughout the year. The gym is, yes, the highest strung it is all year. Absolutely. Maybe people get a little too stressed out, but I still love this when I'm on here on a Sunday morning and I see 14 people changing others people's weights in a workout that they don't even know. And they're cheering them on, high fives. And there are things that blossom from the Open that will never blossom unless you do the Open. So that's just like my quick little spiel on the Open going much deeper than, your scores and what you like to do and what you look like when you work out. It's such a community building, CrossFit strengthening, ecosystem solidifying event that you need to take part of.
I look at the people and I understand, obviously, the people who love the Open. Mm-hmm. They're usually people who do well in it, mm-hmm. Who are just extremely fit people. Mm-hmm. There are also a huge subset of people that, I would want to ask, maybe if you didn't come away with good feelings on the Open, why do you think you weren't happy with how you did in the Open or what your Open experience was? And I could tell for myself, I squeaked into quarterfinals and it could have broke either way for me. Okay. I could have missed one ring muscle up.
Right.
I could have not hit my 12 snatches at 135. There were a couple things that I could have easily fallen on the other side of things. And if I hadn't, how would I have felt? Mm-hmm. And honestly, I probably would have felt pretty crappy.
Yeah.
And maybe I would have been looking at myself and blaming others. I would have been like, Dave, you didn't program any thruster work for us beforehand. Right. You didn't have us work on snatches.
Yep.
You didn't. It's easy. It would be easy for me to look around me mm-hmm. and say, this is why the Open sucks.
Yeah, that's the easiest answer always.
I am a fit individual and I am doing really well. And this is not an accurate test and it makes me not feel good.
Right.
And I don't like this and I should just stick to whatever it is that I'm doing and not feel badly about myself. And mm-hmm. that's totally fine. I understand that. Mm-hmm. And I could see myself on that side of things.
Right.
But on the other hand, I feel like that would be a very negative and unhelpful approach for me as an individual.
Right.
Especially because I do believe in the CrossFit methodology. I do love our community. I think the biggest thing about the Open announcement were Joel and Kathleen being highlighted. Mm-hmm. Just two of many people we could have highlighted in our gym every day who have overcome obstacles, barriers, big and little things. I mean, even this past Saturday, someone came back from 2 months after having a baby and crushing it on a Saturday workout. Those are the little things I see every day. And if I believe in that, then I can't sit there and complain about how I'm doing in the Open. I should look at it and take it for what it's worth, which is an opportunity for me to meet with people, to see Mike McKinney and Kyle Roeder doing ring muscle ups without it felt like 500
Yeah,
people,
that was fun.
cheering them. I mean, all, drunk as hell on Sierra Nevada, but that was great. Like, that was awesome. Like, all of these things is what CrossFit is all about. And it's also about me looking at myself saying, what is it? It's not about others. It's about what I am doing to either help others, help myself, and to grow.
Yeah.
Like, you can use this to grow. And if I don't break into quarterfinals next year, which is a very probably good chance I won't, I'm going to have to look at myself and say, is this about me, or is this about me like using this as a better opportunity? And I feel like that's where I read a lot about people not doing the Open, and I feel like it's because of whatever negative feelings that they're having. And I would challenge you not to have those negative feelings.
Right.
Channel it and make this useful because it is on so many levels. My daughter, my son, like,
so awesome seeing them do it.
Susan, they regardless of what level you are at, like, they took something away from it.
And the coolest part about that, Sam, is like, watching Sasha and Nick, like a family of 4 take on the Open, like, there is nothing competitive about it. And like, this is coming from someone that competes. So it's like, am I allowed to talk like this? Like, I love the Open, yes, for competitive reasons. Not this year though, but I think that's one of the coolest things. It's like, I can't wait till Brock does the Open. Like Anthony Gerald did with Mike Gerald. He's been doing it for a few years now.
Joni Harrington with her daughters.
Yeah.
How awesome was that?
Like, this is what I'm saying, coming from the guy that likes to compete, blah, blah, blah. There are so many things that come out of the Open that are just so far beyond. And like, yes, the initial reaction, Sam, is if you don't make quarterfinals, if you had a bad Open, you immediately go to performance. And we've talked about this. I think it's one of the most fascinating things to talk about in CrossFit on this podcast is how do you blend fitness, happiness with performance? Because I'm telling you, the more you chase performance, the unhappier you're going to end up being, because you're never going to be those guys.
That's right.
You're never going to be Vellner and Roman. And that means there's always going to be a lot of people better than you at this, right? My best year of CrossFit, there's still hundreds of people that are better than me at it. But I think it's because I'm so entrenched in all angles of Bison and CrossFit that it's easy for me to separate the two. Like, I have my competitive aspirations, but I also have the enjoyment of just being in this environment that I'm telling you guys, like, I think we've now proven this. There might be a handful of gyms in the entire world that have what we have when it comes to the Open. And like, why can't we just appreciate that and have fun with it and contribute to it, right? Like, let's say you don't make quarters next year, Sam, and like, let's say you try to, and just something comes up and you got hurt or just didn't do well in the workout.
Yep.
That is a negative. For every one of those negatives, if you really want to find the positives in the gym, there's going to be 20 things that you can walk around for every negative and say like, wow, awesome, 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 awesome. And that will be a personal responsibility of yours. And
Absolutely.
I'm not just saying it to you. I'm saying it to everyone.
At least Team Black will win again next year and we'll be good.
Those results are coming out today. But anyway, so yeah, I think that's a good way to end it, guys, because I feel strongly about the Open, what it can do for you, what it could do for the gym, what it could do for your coaches, your everything, the whole ecosystem in general. But the answer to it is, let's try not to make it only about yourself. You can pursue individual goals all you want, but there is so much more to this than the actual what your scores were and where you ended up.
I want to just give one last shout out to you, because this has been architected by you every year. This is what, 10th year into it?
Yeah, this was our 10th Open.
Yeah. And for it to come, better things are even more to come, I'm
sure.
Yes,
they are. Absolutely.
But for it to have had this type of high point, this was all on so many levels. I mean, yes, it's community. There's so many, the coaches, like other, everyone else, the other owners, everyone else. But it really was driven by you on every level. I saw how hard you worked over the past 3 weeks, especially with the Open announcement.
Yeah.
And I would just really like to thank you, because there's so many little things that you do all the time that really cause these things to pay off. Things that, and that's just like training or life or anything else. They're just lessons like, I always think of you as the hardest working person in the room. Like I find very few people that would ever be able to sort of match that. And the fact that this is your endeavor, how successful you've become at it, like that is something that we've all benefited from. And whether you're part of Bison, you're outside of Bison, anyone would have to look at you and say thank you for what you've done. It really means a lot to me, for everyone else.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been amazing.
Cool. I appreciate that. And fine, you'll get a raise now. Okay. No, but thank you for those kind words. That means a lot. And it does, it really does culminate a lot of things over the years that, it's like exactly like training, the parallels, like all the little things that you don't know you need to do. They're not a big deal, quote, big deal, but it all adds up. And that was definitely the climax of Bison, the climax of my personal CrossFit journey. But we're not done yet.
We're not done yet.
All right. See you next year.
Thank you, everybody, for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Herd Fit podcast. Be on the lookout for next week's episode.